Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome back to the Parliamentary Channel's live coverage of the House of Assembly. The member for Elizabeth, Minister of Financial Services Ryan Pinder, about to make his contribution as the 2013-2014 budget debate continues. So let's join them in the House of Assembly.
Gibson Primary School graduation this morning, which I was grateful to attend and bring remarks. And much to my surprise, I was presented with this beautiful rose by the children, my favorite color. Yeah. But also, Mr. Deputy, this very generous clock, and it reads, "To the Honorable Ryan Pinder, Member of Parliament, in recognition of your support to the Thelma Gibson Primary School." Mr. Deputy, I have a firm belief that we have to give positive encouragement and support to the children of our country, and supporting the educational institutions in which they participate is one of the primary ways in doing so. And I want to congratulate the entire class of 2013 of Thelma Gibson Primary School, and I want to recognize, as I always do every year, the valedictorian, Ms. Andronique Roll. And every year I award a laptop computer to the valedictorian of Thelma Gibson Primary School as they go off into junior high school to be better prepared. One, to recognize achievement, but secondly, to recognize to those who have not graduated, those who are in grades junior to the graduating class, that they can achieve, and if they achieve greatness, there is reward for greatness. And I think it's very important we do that for our children. Mr. Deputy, the budget that we debate is a forward-looking, a progressive, and a realistic statement of the government of the Bahamas' intention for a betterment and a better society and country for Bahamian people. This budget balances the necessary and responsible policy of sound fiscal governance with a framework and innovative strategy for the advancement of Bahamians, providing the basis for employment, career growth, and entrepreneurship of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, we promised the Bahamian people a more responsible government, and we promised a better Bahamas. And with this budget, and through our hard work and God's help, we certainly, as this government, will deliver upon our promises. Mr. Speaker, as I've said on many occasions, I represent an economically diverse constituency. However, while the economic realities of the people of Elizabeth may run the full spectrum of possibilities, I feel that all my constituents' hopes and desires for their children, their siblings, and themselves are the same. We all want a better future, Mr. Speaker, and an opportunity to participate fully in the economy of our country. This budget and the activities and programs which it will fund provide many with that opportunity. This is a budget that moves to secure the future for all Bahamians and establishes the strategy for economic expansion for all Bahamians. This is a budget of hope and a budget of opportunity. Mr. Deputy, we have had a progressive and effective fiscal year in Elizabeth. A year that has seen community initiatives to cause Elizabeth to be a better community to live in. One that is seeing the training framework to cause for the economic advancement of new entrepreneurs in Elizabeth. Mr. Deputy, we have created a year-in-review report for the Elizabeth constituency. I have it here, and I would like, at the end of my communication, to table it in this honorable place. This report sets out the major initiatives undertaken during the first year of my second term as the Member of Parliament for Elizabeth. And Mr. Speaker, while we recognize there is much to be done, we are proud of our work to date in Elizabeth. And I note, Mr. Deputy, you have the chair, but I want to point out, because I'm sure the Speaker is listening, that he is, in this year-end report, congratulating the young man who won the Elizabeth Essay competition. Mr. Speaker, we have broken down the last year into elements of community enhancement and elements of economic opportunity. We in Elizabeth have made a concerted effort to enhance the Elizabeth constituency community. This effort has encompassed a broad range of activities, in many instances addressing recommendations by the residents over the course of the last year. Some of these initiatives, Mr. Speaker, include a partnership with Urban Renewal to provide a community cleanup program. This initiative reaped tremendous results for the betterment of Elizabeth. We focused on areas where reports of criminal activity were reported. And under this program, illegal firearms, stolen goods, and other instruments of crime were uncovered, and such areas have been monitored and maintained. The Malcolm Creek Restoration Project, Mr. Deputy, was launched and work has begun. This is a significant community enhancement program that, in partnership with the surrounding community and the Bahamas National Trust, will restore in an environmentally conscious manner the last natural estuary in eastern Nassau, Malcolm Creek. This will not only address observations of surrounding residents of unsightliness, but will represent a significant improvement to the quality of life to the surrounding area, providing a nature preserve, literally in the backyards of people's homes. Operation Pot Cake in Elizabeth, Mr. Deputy, a significant adverse effect of many of our communities that we represent in this honorable chamber is the proliferation of stray and pack dogs. This was a significant observation in the Elizabeth constituency, and at the request of my constituents and in partnership with the Bahamas Alliance for Animal Rights and Kindness, we undertook a spay and neuter program in some of the most affected areas of the community to ensure that the community is safe for children and ensure neighborhoods are enhanced, mitigating the effect of stray and pack dogs in the area. As I mentioned, Mr. Deputy, in conjunction with the betterment of the community, we also focused on the preparation and training for the economic advancement and opportunities for the constituents of Elizabeth. This is fundamental to my representation of the residents of the Elizabeth constituency, Mr. Deputy, to bring preparation and opportunity to them, my constituents. Some of these initiatives include the Elizabeth Small Business Symposium. This is a program which is a part of the Elizabeth Economic Empowerment Platform. And the objective of this 4-week symposium was to educate, train, and prepare residents of the Elizabeth constituency to start their own businesses. More than 100 constituents registered for and participated in this program. A tremendous success towards the economic empowerment of Elizabeth residents. I want to extend my personal gratitude to small business consultant Mr. Mark Turnquest, who brought his considerable expertise and professionalism to facilitating the symposium. The symposium focused on planning and execution, the business model, marketing and financial plans, the business structure, and organizational plans, and a progress report on the Small and Medium-Sized Act and the SME Development Agency was shared with the attendees. Many participants expressed how important this symposium has been to them and the future success of their businesses. And if you would, allow me to share with you, Mr. Speaker, a testimony of one of the attendees, and I quote, "Minister Pinder, keep up the great work. Money is good, but knowledge is far greater. Once again, thank you. Mr. Turnquest was excellent and gave me that much-needed boost to just do it. The best of the best. I am so proud of you and the positive things you continue to do to help our generation and generations to come. I will forever be grateful to you for affording myself, my husband, and many young people such a wonderful, priceless, invaluable opportunity. Some things in life are priceless, worth more than silver and gold, and this is truly one of those things. Once again, thank you." To ensure that an organized and disciplined approach was conducted to the advancement of economic opportunities to constituents, In Elizabeth, we launched a detailed trade skill registry, Mr. Deputy, where all persons who are in the construction industry, whether a skilled worker or a contractor, are properly recorded so when opportunities arise, we are able to submit their complete portfolios, Mr. Deputy, for contracts and employment opportunities. I can report that this initiative has been successful already. This program was modeled after the successful resume database program in Elizabeth that we've been maintaining for 3 years, Mr. Deputy. One that has demonstrated success to identifying employment and unemployed residents of the constituents of Elizabeth. One constituent has proclaimed the success of this program, stating, "I am truly appreciative of Minister Pinder and his resume database. Through this database, I was gainfully employed, and I am truly grateful. I applaud Minister Pinder for his eagerness to help his constituents. And I continue to encourage constituents to take advantage of these valuable opportunities." But, Mr. Deputy, these are just some of the initiatives over the past year that has advanced the community and economic opportunity for advancement of the constituents of Elizabeth. I encourage constituents and the wider public to review the year in review for Elizabeth. Electronic copies are available at www.ryanpinder.com. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to report on some of the significant achievements in the Elizabeth constituency over the last year. Before addressing matters relevant to my ministry, the Ministry of Financial Services, I would like to address certain matters specifically related to the content of the budget and the budget communication by the Right Honourable Member for Centreville. This is, and I quote, "a budget that secures the future for all Bahamians." This is a budget of responsible fiscal governance, and I quote, "to restore our public finances to a more desirable and a sustainable position." Mr. Deputy, this budget is a budget for growth. This is a budget that will provide opportunities for the advancement of Bahamians and the economic development of the Bahamas as a country. This is a budget that secures the future for Bahamians. Without the focused approach to good fiscal governance, Mr. Deputy, there would be a complete inability for a government to effectively implement a sustainable economic development plan that is focused on growth. Mr. Deputy, the other side would want you to believe otherwise, but I would like to demonstrate how they are just misguided. First, allow me to put this state of affairs into context. Moody's noted that, and I quote, "among Caribbean island economies, only the Bahamas is expected to grow more than 1.5% this year." This demonstrates the difficulty the entire Caribbean region is under and the growth focus of this PLP government. Upon the release of the budget, Mr. Deputy, Moody's observed that the fiscal reforms by this PLP government outlined in the budget are a positive development. Moody's further observed, and we agree, Mr. Deputy, that the country also needs to experience growth to provide further opportunities. And this budget, Mr. Deputy, does just that. This is all from the same Moody's who downgraded the government credit based on the reckless spending during the previous 5 years before the election. The PLP is tasked with saving this country from falling off the fiscal cliff, Mr. Deputy, and this government is well on its way to accomplishing that. And Moody's agrees that this budget hit, and I quote, "all the right notes." And Moody's, we know, has no political axe to grind. So, Mr. Deputy, the following are clear examples of policies to affect economic growth and the growth agenda of this budget. The announcement of the policy framework and the legislation to enhance the creation and expansion of small and medium-sized enterprises. This should not go without considerable focus, Mr. Deputy, because it is anticipated that this framework will be in place by the end of this calendar year. Consultations complete, legislation complete, legislation passed, and the initiative underway to help with a focused and sustained small business development program. We're advancing the efficiencies of ease of doing business through reforms to the e-government platform, modernization of the Customs Department, reforms to the Registrar General's Department, and the Real Property Tax Administration. You see, Mr. Deputy, when doing business itself becomes more efficient, there is more opportunity for these very same businesses to experience growth. Mr. Deputy, policy directives to advance new industries such as the creative industries, the yacht industries, the expansion of agriculture, tourism, and financial services products and their services are evidence of a growth initiative of this budget. Extension to the Family Island Development Encouragement Act, the City of Nassau Revitalization Act, and the first-time homebuyer exemption are all evidence of policies by this government and this budget to continue and bolster economic growth. And I was really shocked to hear the member from Long Island last night, Mr. Deputy, try to lay claim to one of the most successful PLP economic initiatives for home ownership ever seen in this country. The first-time homebuyer exemption, as was clearly explained by the Minister of State for Finance, was a PLP initiative, one that was canceled by the former government, done away with, and only after considerable pressure from the business community, months and months later, thought it necessary to put it back in place. The shock of us sitting here and hearing from the member of Long Island trying to take claim to that. Mr. Deputy, tax and policy initiatives to reduce the cost of electricity to Bahamians and businesses in the Bahamas is a growth initiative. Reduction in these overhead costs allows for stimulus to these businesses to grow. Infrastructure initiatives, such as the construction of schools and mini hospitals, allocations for small home repairs, as well as the launch of our government's housing program, are growth initiatives that provide the necessary capital stimulus for the construction for Bahamian firms. For Bahamian firms, Mr. Deputy. That is a growth initiative by this government and this budget. Mr. Speaker, these are specific instances of legislative and policy initiatives by this PLP government that will have direct influence on economic growth and growth that is focused on opportunities and the advancement of Bahamians and Bahamian businesses, Mr. Deputy. So the policy of this budget is crystal clear. Responsible fiscal governance and strategic and deliberate initiatives to cause for economic growth and opportunity for Bahamians. We heard again from a member from Long Island, Mr. Deputy, last night, say, oh, these fiscal reforms in this budget, these are F&M ideas. These are our ideas. But in the same instance, we hear the member from Long Island of criticizing this side for only having ideas. Well, what do you want? You can't take claim to ideas you don't execute. That was their argument to us. Mr. Deputy, this is a PLP budget. This is a PLP budget of economic growth and fiscal stability. These are PLP ideas, and these are PLP policies. And let's not try, if I wouldn't have thought better, I would have thought that the member from Long Island was again trying to become PLP once again. Mr. Deputy, I would like to now turn to matters relevant to the portfolio of the Ministry of Financial Services. Financial Services, which is the portfolio which I was chosen to lead by the Right Honorable Member from Centerville. From the first day on this job, I, as the Minister, and my efficient ministry sought to accomplish some of the fundamental key initiatives for the industry. Leadership restored, Mr. Deputy. First, upon assuming office, I saw the serious and negative effects of the absence of cabinet-level policy position in financial services as a result of the former administration's dissolution of the Ministry of Financial Services. I, of course, congratulate the Bahamas Financial Services Board for the work over those years to hold the fort. But without a Ministry of Financial Services during those very complicated and challenging years, which continue today, Mr. Deputy, the Bahamas has developed one fundamental deficiency in the industry. It cannot define itself. Given all the changes in the marketplace, our brand was undefined from a policy point of view. I found myself having to answer questions in those early days of this administration of a series of fundamental questions. What was the Bahamas about as a financial services jurisdiction? What made us special? What set us apart from our competitors? What made our model of development sustainable in the long run? All of these questions that could not be answered by the former government because it did not have the cabinet-level attention for the second industry in this country that it deserved. We have to tell our story. And my ministry sought to fill this identified gap immediately and strongly. We had no time to waste, and there was no opportunity for a honeymoon, Mr. Deputy. We had to be swimming with the big boys on day one, and surely we did swim. And so I, working with my team, caused the development of an appropriate narrative to rebrand the Bahamas as a full-service business and financial center. One that facilitates financial services as that component, Mr. Deputy. A very important component to our product offering. We now had a brand, and a brand of substance and credibility, Mr. Deputy. In this coming year, my ministry will continue to tell this story of how great a little country we are. The Bahamas is a success story of a country which within one generation moved from an economy characterized by booms and busts to a stable international business center. I will continue to tell the story of how our financial sector model has evolved over the years. Gone are the days of just back office work. Today, if we are to maintain our standard of living, we must engage in value-added activities within the industry, in product development, and providing the tools necessary for managing client relationships, and Bahamians managing those client relationships. We will continue to tell the story of the Bahamas as a center that offers a full range of services: trusts, banks, funds, insurance, services for the wealthy, second homes, yacht and aircraft services, dispute resolution services. All of these are important services of a full business center. We will continue to tell the story of a business center with a top-notch human capital and infrastructure. And most importantly, a business and financial center with the full government support. Unlike many of our competitors that are a commodity jurisdiction within the industry, our brand is a full-service business and financial center, offering the full range of products and the service providers for those products to support the industry. My ministry will be developing a number of products this year to assist in telling this story as part of our marketing efforts. The first initiative is the development of a standardized book, a pitch book of sorts, that can go from us from place to place in the Bahamas and on the financial services in particular. We plan to have this presentation available in all key languages of markets we plan to target. Investors and potential clients must come to know once again what the Bahamas is about and what we have to offer. My ministry is cultivating brand ambassadors throughout the world using our embassies and our consulates, our locally based expatriate community, and our honorary consuls to tout the mantra in a systematic and a constructive manner, Mr. Deputy, that the Bahamas is the one-stop location for business services. We also propose to publish a keepsake book honoring financial services legends and also celebrating the breadth and the depth of the services offered right here in the Bahamas today. My ministry will continue to work with the Ministry of Tourism and the various tourism and hotel associations to ensure that business services paraphernalia is available in all hotel rooms throughout the Bahamas. And as tourists flock to our shores, and as more and more high-level and high-end tourists flock to our shores, they must be reminded of more than our sun, sand, and sea, but also the many services we can offer, and particularly for them and their businesses. The Bahamas already publishes a number of high-quality magazines, and we look to cause for the financial services industry to have a more dominant feature in all of them. We are already seeing dividends from our efforts so far, Mr. Deputy. Over the past year, the Bahamas has been afforded speaking engagements at numerous high-level conferences throughout the world that raise the Bahamas' profile in financial services and business services tremendously. These include countries like the United Kingdom, Brazil, Panama, countries throughout the Caribbean region, the United States, Switzerland. At each event, we have made the case for why it is best to choose the Bahamas for your business activities, and to highlight the commitment of the Bahamas government to business services. We are seeing a healthy response, and the business community will attest to the strong interest in re-domiciling their clients to the Bahamas, and the requests that they are receiving for a wider range of services to be conducted right here in the Bahamas through permanent establishments operating in and within the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the world is being told, and they are listening, the Bahamas is open for business. Mr. Speaker, over this year, my ministry has made it a priority to meet with all industry leaders, both in the Bahamas and abroad, in order to hear concerns and garner new ideas. We have seen the benefits in terms of new product ideas and new approaches to securing new markets. This year, my ministry will be aggressively seeking to develop from concept to legislation and then to marketing several new fund products that will be researching gaps in order to affect these product offerings in new jurisdictions. For instance, our ease of entry into Latin America, Asia, and the Middle Eastern market. We've already had preliminary conversations with the regulators and the Office of the Attorney General on new products to attract new business, innovative products, products that are specialty products for new jurisdictions, to attract the business to doing business in the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, we have closely watched the developments occurring in some of the dependent competitor jurisdictions and have unashamedly touted to the world the benefits that the Bahamas has to offer as a sovereign, independent, and democratic nation. Almost every speech that I make, you will notice I discuss this idea of sovereignty and the democracy of the Bahamas, and that it is one of our strongest selling points of our country. As I have mentioned before, and I will mention it now, the seat of decision for policy initiatives rests in the government of the Bahamas, the cabinet of the Bahamas, and ultimately the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. We, here in the Bahamas, determine our own destiny. This decision is based solely, I emphasize, 100% on what is in the best interest of the Bahamas and its proud citizens that we are so honored to represent in this great chamber. Mr. Speaker, this is what leadership requires, and lead we will. A second component, important component of my ministry's work program is its policy leadership in external and foreign financial services initiatives. We all can read and we all see that the international landscape for financial services is changing extremely rapidly. The pressures which financial centers like the Bahamas face are intensifying. There can no longer be a bold-faced neglect of these issues like the former government did. The Bahamas must be prepared to champion our way of life, Mr. Deputy. We must champion our industry and our future, and we must do so unashamedly, and do so responsibly, and do so forcefully, Mr. Deputy. And I know the Minister of Foreign Affairs agrees completely with me on that initiative. Since coming to office in 2012, I have seen firsthand the convergence of strategies of the Global Forum, the OECD, the G8, the G20, the EU, And now, Mr. Deputy, for the first time, we're seeing the convergence of the United Nations itself on matters related to financial services. Leaders of all of these organizations have made statements to the effect that they wish to crush, and I quote, tax havens, and countries which prioritize financial services as a mechanism for development. We can no longer ignore these threats, Mr. Deputy, and we must respond in a systematic and principled approach to address the misperceptions of the Bahamas and its financial services industry. Mr. Deputy, we must tell our story. We must advance our industry, and we must advance our country as a sovereign and independent state, and in doing so, at the same time, advance the Bahamian people, Mr. Deputy. As an example of this, my ministry can hold its head high with respect to its approach to the United States Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act. Many would know it as FATCA. And this is a U.S. piece of legislation which was enacted into law in 2010, which causes significant issues on foreign financial institutions, most institutions in the financial services industry. Mr. Deputy, one of the most negligent things the former government did with respect to financial services industry is that this issue of FATCA, which came into effect in 2010, remained untouched in the policy sphere until our administration. In fact, there was no advancement made by the former government, and industry completely abandoned, Mr. Deputy, by the former F&M administration. In March of this year, after several months of constructive industry consultation, I led a delegation to Washington to begin discussions with the United States Treasury and the IRS on this piece of legislation, FATCA. The Bahamas had missed 2 years of serious involvement in this issue, Mr. Deputy. And upon reading the final regulations under FATCA, my ministry was concerned about the seemingly unnecessarily large reach of this legislation. Regulation, Mr. Deputy, into areas which went beyond the information needed by the United States to ensure tax compliance by their taxpayers. We put forth our arguments carefully and strategically, and through negotiation with the United States, we were able to secure certain important, and I say industry-saving exemptions, Mr. Deputy, for trusts, private trust companies, and funds because of negotiations by this PLP government with the United States. The industry the world over benefits from exemptions that we put in place. We, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy, we saved the industry not only for the Bahamas, but for many the world over. The Bahamas also secured the first, Mr. Deputy, and only FATCA workshop facilitated by the Treasury and the IRS officials for this region. The first and only, where 10 countries from throughout the region attended, and they themselves had their first interaction with the United States on bilateral negotiations. Mr. Speaker, these are major accomplishments by the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Major accomplishments in financial services by this PLP administration. Accomplishments that, in my opinion, demonstrate that the Bahamas is a world leader in financial services, a world leader as a diversified business sector, and a world leader in industry policy. The work on FATCA will continue, and funding has been allocated in this budget for continued industry education and training on FATCA matters. In this next week, my ministry will be presenting to Cabinet the recommendation on the way forward for FATCA. We have already held industry consultations and have received overwhelming support for the proposed approach by the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. After Cabinet approval, my ministry will need to finalize our discussions with the United States so that an agreement can be signed and industry can feel comfortable and confident as they seek to do business with U.S. clients and U.S. capital flows. And as I have said before, the United States offers a treasure trove of compliant business that our firms here in the Bahamas can leverage. But FATCA is just one of international initiatives that my ministry has followed and advanced. And together with the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General's Office, the Ministry of Financial Services is closely watching developments in Europe with respect to the Alternative Investment Fund Management Directive. These initiatives are fast-paced and moving. And my ministry is working closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to cause us to be able to have our finger on the pulse of the shifts in the industry. Furthermore, my ministry is working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to launch a full defense of the Bahamas economic and development model to the world. We declare today, Mr. Deputy, that the business and financial services model is a legitimate and even a desired model for development for our countries. The Bahamas remains committed to this model and continues to meet its international obligations to ensure that our industry is well regulated and operates according to international best practices. In every single instance, Mr. Deputy, international organizations, including the OECD, the IMF, the FATF, the International Organization of Security Commissions, have recognized the Bahamas and the financial services industry of the Bahamas as compliant with international best practices with an objective determination as a well-regulated jurisdiction. We are the world leaders. Human development, Mr. Speaker. The issue of training and human development is an essential pillar of my ministry. My 10-year strategic plan includes a vision for the long-term betterment of the people employed in financial services. The Ministry of Financial Services has decided to focus on human development and mechanisms to improve productivity in the financial services sector. The Bahamas is competing with many jurisdictions for the best international financial sector firms. The choice of where to relocate is the result of a complex interplay of factors. And research indicates that one of the main factors in location of choice is the availability of skilled local talent. The Bahamas has always touted a pool of employees as a major competitive advantage. And as part of my ministry's efforts to reinforce the Bahamas' global position, my ministry will undertake measures and is designing and executing programs to further develop a platform of skills. My ministry's strategy focuses on education at all levels. The strategy includes foreign language and cultural sensitization. And I want to make sure that our Bahamian professionals have an equal opportunity to move from back office, where their skills and talents are focused, to the front office, where client interface and exchanges occur. I'm seeing positive advancement in this area. My ministry is committed to higher level certifications and training to our industry. My ministry is in discussions with the Caribbean Export Development Agency and the CARIFORM Task Force on Financial Services with respect to establishing the Regional Center of Excellence in Financial Services right here in the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy. Last month, representatives from the Bahamas Institute of Financial Services met with these institutions, and the presentation was well received. The same task force met with representatives from the College of the Bahamas School of Business to discuss its programs and to discuss opportunities for collaboration. My ministry has reviewed the strong programs which are offered right here in the Bahamas. No other jurisdiction in this region, Mr. Deputy, has the breadth and the depth of products, the length of history in financial services, and the established educational programs which offer internationally recognized certifications in financial services. This country of 350,000 people has much to be proud of, and we need to start telling the world about our success. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas is open for business. Mr. Speaker, my ministry seeks to create an endowment fund for business education, continuing education and professional development programs at the College of the Bahamas, soon to be the University of the Bahamas. We're actively pursuing international and local exchange programs for our professionals, Mr. Deputy. And Mr. Deputy, I am proud to announce that my ministry, in collaboration with the Association of International Banks and Trust Companies, has developed a competitive internship program in which bright and academically accomplished students at the College of the Bahamas with leadership potential are provided with paid internships, Mr. Deputy, with sponsoring banks throughout the summer. This program was officially launched on the 22nd of May. And through collaboration with my ministry, there's already been a soft skills workshop held on May 15th to provide information on professionalism and decorum. However, more importantly, the interns were informed that in the financial services sector as a way of life, every job is important, and therefore any job should be performed at the best of your ability. Mr. Speaker, I wish to launch a new program to reward and highlight those financial sector firms, large and small, which invest in capacity building. And by this I mean the development of specialized skills of Bahamians in the financial services industry. The ministry invites all financial sector firms to submit a description of their training programs by November. We want to provide incentives and rewards for your investments in our people. The development of our domestic human capital and financial services, coupled with our sovereignty, will be the foundation of the growth of an industry that we do best, the international business and financial services industry. Mr. Deputy, I now turn to the portfolio responsibility of trade. And the government has taken a targeted and a forward-looking and proactive approach of matters related to international trade policy and trade promotion. It has allocated resources to pursue economic development and ultimately job creation through this avenue, and to ensure that the existing positive positions we have secured are maintained and in fact bolstered. Trade is an avenue for further economic diversification and opportunity for Bahamians. During the midterm budget exercise, I informed this Honourable House of a five-pronged approach the government was taking with respect to international trade policy and promotion, including 1, educate Bahamian people on the status of the Bahamas in the context of its international trade agreements and the available opportunities for the advancement of Bahamians and the Bahamian economy and trade. Secondly, advance the implementation of the government's commitments under the Economic Partnership Agreement and continue pursuing accession to the World Trade Organization. Third, to develop a coordination with other government agencies, the legislative framework to cause the Bahamas to be a secure trading jurisdiction internationally. Fourth, prepare a unique value-added trade strategy to advance the Bahamas as the preeminent trade jurisdiction in this hemisphere, utilizing the infrastructure already in place in Grand Bahama. And fifth, promote the Bahamas as a strategically placed trade hub with all of the necessary infrastructure and services to be the gateway to the Americas. We have made considerable progress in all 5 areas, Mr. Deputy. The Economic Partnership Agreement. In 2008, the former administration signed the Economic Partnership Agreement between the European Union and CARIFORUM, which is CARICOM, the Caribbean Community, and the Dominican Republic. The commitments primarily related to the trade in goods. However, negotiations regarding the trade in services, such as financial and tourism services, were concluded in 2010. There, however, was limited to, let me say this again, Mr. Speaker, because in every instance we see the neglect of the former administration. There was limited to no effort placed by the former administration into the implementation of the legal requirements under the Economic Partnership Agreement, an international treaty. No vision towards the advancement of trade as an economic development pillar of the Bahamas. The former government failed to comply with international obligations for the Bahamas, failed to engage regional leaders and domestic stakeholders, and failed to develop new and key areas of economic development. We have a different approach, Mr. Deputy. We look to advance the country. We look to comply with our legal requirements and in all instances provide the basis for new opportunities for Bahamians. And this includes the progressive and the disciplined advancement of the Bahamas as the preeminent trade hub in this hemisphere, connecting 2 worlds, Mr. Deputy, the old and the new. In 2012, as the minister responsible for trade, I took the necessary steps to negotiate commitments regarding services and that they were incorporated in the Economic Partnership Agreement. We are the preeminent services economy in this jurisdiction, in this region. And it is my belief that our ability to export our services, Mr. Deputy, will create significant economic opportunities for Bahamians. In fact, countries throughout the Caribbean and Latin America have inquired and solicited our expertise in key services areas such as tourism and financial services. And Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that as part of the Prime Minister's budget communication and the attending legislation tabled in this honorable place, this government in just 1 year has catapulted the government's compliance with its international trade obligations under the EPA and have set the legislative framework for the advancement of trade as a significant pillar of economic development of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, this government, we believe in the Bahamas, but we believe in causing the Bahamas to be positioned for continued economic growth, opportunity, and diversification. The tariff bill, Mr. Deputy, under the EPA, there were certain reductions in duties from the EU to take place over 25 years. These reductions are to take place incrementally every 2 years. The first reduction was to take place in January 2011. Former government did not comply. And the second in January 2013. There was nothing in place to cause us to be able to meet that deadline. The former government neglected its international obligations and did not provide what was necessary for the implementation of our international legal obligations. The tariff bill, tabled as part of this budget communication, implements these first 2 tariff cuts and provides legislatively for the additional tariff reductions and meeting our international obligations over the next 20 years. The tariff bill has been modernized. It significantly simplifies the schedules, causing for ease in its application. These features increase the ease of doing business and transparency in trading and provide a mechanism to facilitate international trade as an economic pillar of this great country. International trade is further facilitated by the Customs Management Amendment Act and regulations tabled in this honorable place. The government has taken the requisite steps to cause the Customs Management Act to be brought into force as of July 1st. A key value of this, Mr. Deputy, is that we are now able to implement what's called a rules of origin regime. We will now be in a position to show evidence that a particular good was produced in the Bahamas, thus enabling those goods to gain the preferential access into the European Union and regionally. See, this is of significant importance to providing the necessary framework for advancing the Bahamas as the preeminent industry and trade hub in this hemisphere, causing this the basis for significant opportunities for Bahamians, linking, Mr. Deputy, Latin America and North America to the European Union through the Bahamas. Government procurement. The government has also taken the first steps to address our obligations regarding the method by which government procurement takes place. Draft legislation was tabled, and in short order, regulations to support the legislation will be implemented. This not only causes us to be compliant with our international obligations, but provides the framework for the transparent administration of government, a clear example of the policies behind this PLP government. Intellectual property, Mr. Deputy. I am most pleased about legislation concerning the protection of intellectual property, which will be soon tabled within Parliament. The government, in a collaborative effort amongst agencies, including the Office of the Attorney General, has undertaken broad inter-island consultations regarding the modernization suite of legislation which will implement the requirements and obligations under the Economic Partnership Agreement, but create the framework to be recognized as a jurisdiction consistent with international best practices. And we heard from the member for Central and South Eleuthera speak about the comprehensive reform initiative undertaken in just one short year, Mr. Deputy. A government of action, Mr. Deputy. This legislation not only fulfills important international obligations, but as mentioned, provides the framework for the advancement of international and Bahamian businesses in the international and global marketplace. On the international business aspect, how are we able to attract international businesses to do business in the Bahamas without a framework for protection of some of the most valuable assets these businesses have? Their intellectual property. This will also allow Bahamian entrepreneurs who want to either source their products from abroad or distribute their products abroad to have the protections in the world economy. A defined and modern intellectual property regime is a tool for economic advancement and empowerment for our entrepreneurs, Mr. Deputy. To further the successes achieved in implementing the EPA, the government has also secured a consultancy sponsored by CART Fund at no cost to the Bahamian people to have executed a national EPA implementation plan. This plan is meant to detail each obligation the Bahamas has under the EPA, identify the specific agency responsible for implementing that obligation, and provide a timeline and status for implementation. This implementation plan will act as the backdrop for us to be able to access 300,000 euros, a grant, again, at no cost to the Bahamian people, to further the development of the economic opportunities in trade for Bahamians. In weeks to come, the government will consider the proposal for establishing an EPA implementation unit, a unit within the ministry responsible for advancing this philosophy of trade forward for the advancement of Bahamians. The unit will use the implementation plan tailored to the Bahamian environment to continue to put in place the provisions of the agreement and seek economic opportunities for Bahamians. In fact, Mr. Deputy, we've recently held sessions specifically with engineers and architects and other service providers on devising ways for those service providers here in the Bahamas to access the European market under the EPA and to propose to do so for other sectors in the coming budget year. We need to think big, and we need to be able to bring our expertise we have developed in this country, in the great country of the Bahamas, and extend it to other markets. It is a fact of business, but it is an opportunity for us to access new business. You would have heard the honorable member, well, turning to the World Trade Organization. You would have heard the honorable member for Fox Hill and the Minister of Foreign Affairs report that the government has opened a new mission in Geneva. Geneva is where the World Trade Organization sits. It is the heart of international trade. In the immediate present, the Bahamas mission in Geneva will be used to facilitate negotiations for the Bahamas to become a member of the World Trade Organization. And as we continue to mature in regards to international trade, the Geneva mission will be used as the hub for the government trade initiatives. In the context of accession to the WTO, we've advanced multilateral and bilateral negotiations, particularly with our largest trading partner, the United States, following fruitful meetings in Washington. We've received strong indications of support for accession from our Latin American partners, the Europeans, and the People's Republic of China. And the government's efforts have all been to secure additional market access for Bahamian goods and services. The government is doing three things with respect to policy regarding the World Trade Organization and the accession thereto. First, to accede, countries must have in place a regulatory framework consistent with the rules of the World Trade Organization. These regulations are based on international best practices and create a transparent and an accountable environment in which to conduct business. The reform of our business regulatory environment makes the Bahamas more attractive in and from through which to do and conduct business, consistent with our goal and our philosophy of being the preeminent international business center in this region. These reforms enhance trade in both goods and services. Second, the government is also negotiating with WTO member countries on the extent to which businesses in their respective countries might have access to our market. Our domestic businesses can attest that this government has approached the market access negotiations in a different manner from the former government. We have been open, we have been transparent, we have been very specific in the industries in which we consult, gaining feedback from the operations on the ground. We have commenced these on a sector-by-sector basis. The extent to which you will wish foreign and additional foreign participation in their business. And the government will use this feedback to tailor our offers. And I might report that some industries want liberalization. They want access to foreign capital in their business. They want access to expertise, and they have told us as a government that's the case. Other industries don't, and they don't want it. And they want to operate as they operate. And that's fine as well. But we have an understanding from the business community in every sector as we do these consultations. What serves their sector best? Mr. Deputy, I'm not a marina operator. So the marina operators have to tell me what serves their sector best. I'm not a hotel operator either. They have to tell us, the government, what serves their sector best. And of keen interest, Mr. Deputy, the first offer under the for the World Trade Organization accession by the former administration, especially in trade of services, they had hotel services and financial services closed to foreign investment. Closed. Now I ask you, who owns Atlantis? Who owns Scotiabank? Who owns Pictet, Credit Suisse, UBS? How do you, with a straight face, present something to an international community that has no bearing on what is going on in your country and no consistency with the national investment policy? How do you do it? And then we wonder why these things drag on. It's because there's no attention to detail and no attention provided by the former administration, Mr. Deputy. Third, the government is also in the process of preparing terms of reference for an international and local consultancy for a technical and empirical analysis to be undertaken to determine whether, in fact, and in what specific areas we must undertake and what actions to undertake. See, this consultancy will cause us to have a market understanding of the country and cause us to understand which industries can take advantage of new opportunities and how do we prepare other industries. And when these three factors come together, the reform of the regulatory framework, the successful negotiation of market access for the benefit of the Bahamas, and the completion of an empirical analysis on the pros and cons to inform the Bahamian people, the Bahamas will make the decision on accession to the World Trade Organization. And we're hoping to be in a position to be able to make that decision by the end, December 2014. The Caribbean community, better known as CARICOM. The government has been re-engaged fully within the Caribbean region, thought of as leaders within the Caribbean region, and are active in the negotiations with Canada on a new CARICOM-Canada Trade and Development Agreement. We're closely monitoring the advances made, and we are in constant dialogue with the Canadians to advance our interests in those regional negotiations. We have one of the largest presence of Canadian businesses and persons within the region. And we have an interest in attracting new business, but creating new opportunities for our people. Mr. Deputy, consistent with my financial services portfolio, we have taken a very, very disciplined and aggressive approach on educational initiatives in the context of trade. With these strides by this government to advance the trade policy, we are advancing the educational initiatives as well. We need to build capacity in specialized areas. My ministry has worked collaboratively with the continuing education services of the College of the Bahamas and the law faculty at COB and the various law schools. We will be launching in that collaboration, Mr. Deputy, in collaboration with College of the Bahamas, the law schools, and the Bar Association, a new course, a course called the Introduction to the Law and Policy of the World Trade Organization, providing the framework of the necessary capacity building needed in our professional economy. This course is geared primarily towards practicing legal professionals, and it is designed to provide insight into the law and policy of the World Trade Organization for our professionals who will be faced with new legal issues once the Bahamas succeeds to the World Trade Organization. It seeks to begin preparing our professionals now, Mr. Deputy. It is meant to serve as a feeder course, and depending on its success, will lead to additional, more advanced course offerings in collaboration with the law school, the College of the Bahamas, and the Bar Association. This course will be offered this summer in July, and the 12 hours of instruction will be equivalent to two continuing credit courses offered by the College of the Bahamas. We are working with the Bar Association to further other initiatives to further the capacity building of our profession. And Mr. Deputy, at conclusion, I would like to table the flyer for this course. We think this is a groundbreaking capacity building initiative. The Introduction to the Law and Policy of the World Trade Organization. The Ministry is also working with the law faculty of COB and UE to provide internships within the Ministry of Financial Services Trade Unit to 2 students of the law faculty who have a keen interest in international trade. We are seeking to provide and build the technical capacity of Bahamians as we try to chart a new economic development initiative for the furtherance of our country. With this initiative, we continue to grow the country's capacity in new areas. The Ministry of Financial Services has executed an aggressive, a methodical, and a broad public education campaign in respect to matters of international trade. And this was in keeping with the promises made by this government, Mr. Deputy, to inform and consult the Bahamian people on each trade initiative with which we have engaged and regarding the trade-related pieces of legislation. And we have encouraged an open dialogue in this regard. Targeted attention is given to trade and services. And many of the seminars held go throughout the region, including Grand Bahama. Indeed, members from the other side have attended these. And I would say that they have admitted to me, and they did not say it was in private, that they were thankful for this government's engagement of the professional community and thankful for their presence in what we were doing. Certainly I know that this is a bilateral support in these initiatives.
Think so?
I think so. I think so. So, Mr. Speaker, educational initiatives in all regards will continue and are forthcoming. Our value-added trade strategy, Mr. Deputy, all of the efforts of the government in the context of international trade are to foster the economic development of the Bahamas and for Bahamians. To bring structure and focus to these initiatives, we have launched the government's value-added trade strategy. which seeks to leverage the Bahamas' geographic location, its trade logistics, its infrastructure, including the container port, and the benefits available under preferential trade agreements, to create a platform for which to position the Bahamas in the international and regional trade initiative. There is no reason why every single or most of the trading activity in this region should not have some value-added component in the Bahamas and leverage our logistics. In fact, I was invited to speak in Guatemala prior to the OAS meetings as a trade minister from the region. Present were Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, two of the largest population countries in the region, and the Bahamas. And we told our story. We told our story of Freeport. We told our story of trade agreements that we have entered into. And we told our story on how we invite international business to come and do business in our country. We are raising the profile of the Bahamas in every instance, attracting new business, attracting new opportunities. In fact, the government has pursued the value-added trade strategy with such tenacity that is seeking to be engaged in regional trade partnerships. We are in the final stages of concluding negotiations on a memorandum of understanding on trade with the Dominican Republic, which will come under the umbrella memorandum of understanding that will be executed between the government of the Bahamas and the government of the Dominican Republic. And this MOU on trade has included in it the formation of a business council, which will link businesses between the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas to leverage our expertise and their expertise in one. And what we would like to ultimately accomplish is to have significant businesses out of the Dominican Republic actually based out of the Bahamas, because leveraging their logistics in Freeport saves them money. Saves them money. We, Mr. Deputy, are at the cusp of a new development in our economic model. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to lay on the table of this Honorable House the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement between the CARICOM community and the government of the United States of America. This Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, better known as a TIFA, was executed on the 28th of May, 2013 by the President of Haiti, Michel Martelly, as chairman of the Conference of Heads of Governments of CARICOM. I had the honor, Mr. Deputy, of being part of the Prime Minister's delegation, along with Minister Mitchell, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and His Excellency Paiswell Forbes, during the execution of the TIFA. And as a member of CARICOM, the Bahamas has agreed to the execution of the TIFA, as it provides the important formal structure of trade and business between CARICOM and the United States. Mr. Speaker, most importantly, our government, and this is where we become regional leaders, and this is where this government always advances the interests of its people. Our government utilized the opportunity of parties negotiating this agreement to have memorialized a matter of great importance to the Prime Minister, one that he speaks of frequently in the international community. In the recitals of the agreement, we have embedded a recognition that all CARICOM countries, Mr. Deputy, do not have the same geographic composition, and that this fact affects the level of development in our countries. In the case of the Bahamas, and I put the case forward frequently, as does the Prime Minister, our archipelagic composition, a country of islands, many islands, specifically increases the cost of governance and providing essential services to the Bahamian people. This fact is often not taken into consideration when we look to donor agencies and other institutions to provide development support for the Bahamas. They judge us based on GDP per capita, not taking into account this important factor, a factor that the government of the Bahamas took the lead on in negotiating into this agreement as a recognition by the United States that that fact exists. That is of fundamental importance as we continue the development of this country. As we continue to seek development funds for the University of the Bahamas. As we continue to seek further development funds for the economic infrastructure of this country. The Bahamas, once again, under this PLP administration, taking the lead regionally. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to one of the largest and most embarrassing, potentially embarrassing, matters that the former administration had led this country down. I talk about the HBO USTR 301 report, an intellectual property concern. The government of the Bahamas, this government of the Bahamas, has cooperated with the U.S. government on another important trade and business-related initiative. One of particular importance was that involving disputes over the payment of royalties to HBO from our jurisdiction. This matter has implications for trade-related services, aspects of intellectual property, and is one which is monitored and reported on publicly by the Office of the United States Trade Representative. After many years of this issue being outstanding and, frankly, ignored by the former government, I am pleased to report that through a collaborative effort of the Ministry of Financial Services, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Bahamas Copyright Tribunal, what was that? And my colleague sitting behind me, the member for Central and South Eleuthera, along with the assistance of our partners to the north, specifically the Office of the USTR, we have been able to resolve this outstanding issue, one that has plagued this country in international reputation for many of years. In fact, we had reliable knowledge that we were to be listed once again as an uncooperative jurisdiction by the United States in intellectual property on the 301 report. And due to the proactive efforts of the Office of the Attorney General and specifically the Minister of State for Legal Affairs, the chairman of the Copyright Tribunal, Mr. Obi Pinlin, and our ministry, we were able to not only negotiate effectively the release between the two jurisdictions, but effect the payment of the royalties to HBO, therefore extinguishing this important cloud that has been hanging over the heads in the international arena. In one short year, Mr. Deputy, we were able to accomplish that. While the former administration sat on their hands for 5 years, causing significant reputational harm and potential business harm to this jurisdiction. Shame on them, Mr. Deputy. Shame on them. Mr. Deputy, it is resolutions like these issues which send signals to the international community that the Bahamas is serious about attracting business. We are serious about economic development, and we are serious about being taken seriously as the preeminent international business center in this hemisphere. The efforts of this government in the area of international trade are inextricably linked to the bolstering and expansion of existing industry in the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I would like to now turn to industry. We have restored concessions to domestic manufacturers which were previously available to them in the former budget. And during the budget exercise last year, we removed the 10% duty payable under the Industries Encouragement Act and the Tariff Act. We've increased employment opportunities within the sector because of these initiatives by this government. We continue to receive reports from manufacturers on business opportunities that have become available since our government's amendment of the legislation. Mr. Deputy, I'm pleased to table in this honorable House letters from industry participants, from manufacturers in the Bahamas. Many letters, Mr. Deputy, which attests to the fact that this move by this government has significantly and positively affected their respective businesses. At the end of my communication, I would like to table all of these letters, Mr. Deputy. But I would like to just read a few quotes from a few companies. And I would like the public to take note that this is not a partisan exercise. And when I name the companies, it will be clear to everybody. It will be clear to everybody that this government is about the advancement of business for all. I quote, "An employee who had been made part-time due to the impact of the 10% import tariff has been reinstated to full-time status, and additionally another Bahamian seamstress was hired on part-time basis." Bahama handprints. The removal of the 10% import tariff on our materials has alleviated some of the pressure and has allowed us to hire 6 new persons. Chelsea's Choice. Due to the duty-free concessions under the Act, the company is able to hire another employee and purchase an additional machine that doubles our output capacity. Cartwright's Bedding. This reduction in material costs has enabled us to maintain our prices so as to remain competitive with imported bottled water. In addition to this, we have been able to purchase much-needed equipment and spare parts in order to keep our production up to standards that we have set. Because of this new equipment and tax incentive, we've been able to employ 8 new persons. Aquapure. When the current government... What? Yeah.
Sorry, member. Address the chair.
I'll yield.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Long Island.
No, just hearing him talk, Mr. Speaker, on water, I'm just wondering, and this isn't an offense, does this also take place to water producers in Family Islands? Yeah. Because one of the things that we've seen is that we have a Family Island water producer who actually has to sell his water to Nassau to make money because of the water that's being imported into the Family Islands. Has there been any increase in tariffs in the foreign production?
Chair recognizes the honourable member for Elizabeth.
Water has a protective tariff of 75% already. It's a very high tariff. But that complaint is consistent through the water industry. But water manufacturers throughout the entire Bahamas, and all manufacturers throughout the entire Bahamas, can take advantage of the benefits and concessions under the Industries Encouragement Act. And to the extent that they may not have applied, I encourage them to please send an application. I continue. When the current government lifted the 10% duty on raw materials and equipment in September 2012, having seen our margins begin to return to previous levels, we have since re-employed 3 of the 5 staff that were previously laid off, Blanco Chemicals. The removal of the 10% import tariff has allowed our business to stay in business for 12 years. It has allowed us to be competitive with our U.S. counterparts, IMC Awnings. The removal of the 10% import tariff has allowed EPIC to expand with the hiring of 6 new staff, purchase new equipment, and open a second store in Nassau, EPIC Battery. Believe it or not, the duty exemptions, which allowed me to market my business, allowed me to educate my 3 children and have them to be the first to complete college in the family, Abaco Ceramics. Since the removal of the 10% duty, we've been able to, and I will list them because he has listed a length of them, employ 6 additional employees, expand our product offering to include locally produced water, and we anticipate that the introductions to account for 15% growth in the variety of products. And we've been able to break new ground on a new warehouse which cost in excess of $500,000 and employed more than 20 Bahamians in its construction, Caribbean Bottling Company. Now, Mr. Deputy, you would note that many of those companies are preeminent manufacturers in this country without political partisanship. We are a government that looks to put in policy for the advancement of all economic opportunities for all Bahamians. And we look for their growth and further development. These progressive initiatives, shortly after coming to office and restoring the duty concessions to manufacturers, have had a significant positive effect to business, to Bahamians, and to economic development of our country. These policies are examples of strong and progressive leadership, Mr. Deputy. I turn to new industry, Mr. Deputy, And the government has assiduously pursued the development of new industry. This has included dialogue with public and private sector stakeholders throughout the Caribbean region and South America. This past year, I embarked on a series of intelligence gathering exercises that entailed liaising with various industry members to review their concerns. And as Minister of Financial Services with the portfolio responsibility for industry, I must remain cognizant of my social responsibilities and obligations to ensuring sustainable economic growth for the development throughout the Bahamas. My ministry remains committed to ensuring economic expansion and promotion of new industries. Creative management and the creative industries, Mr. Deputy. The development of new sources of income in our country is key to economic growth. And as the government of the Bahamas, we will creatively develop a strategic framework for diversification of our economy. The establishment of the creative industry sector in the Bahamas will be a part of this encompassing multi-agency approach. The Ministry of Financial Services has undergone extensive research on the viability and the framework for establishing a creative industries and developing a creative industries. Countries such as Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago, and Barbados have been successful in marketing their creative industries in such areas as music, culinary arts, film, fashion, and certainly they have an economic benefit to their respective countries. The industrial development of the creative industry sector in the Bahamas and the promotion of other industries will allow for more job security through the Bahamas, progressively putting Bahamians first and promoting Bahamian ownership and entrepreneurship throughout our nation. As economic regional integration continues, the hot topic in the region is creative industries. The establishment of the creative industries in the Bahamas not only promotes our culture, Mr. Deputy, but allows us to have true regional economic benefit. The time is now for us to continue to creatively manage and develop a more competitive edge that differentiates the Commonwealth of the Bahamas from our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We must commercialize our natural treasures and talents for the benefit of our people. As unemployment in the Bahamas continues to be a trend amongst the youth of our country, the youth continue to play a significant role in the promotion of our culture. Marketing of creative industries in the Bahamas diversifies our economy and addresses the national issues and empowers our youth. The vision of the Prime Minister communicated in this budget communication provides the necessary foundation for the launch and advancement of opportunities in the creative industries. The Bahamian-influenced festival, which will be hosted on an annual basis, will allow for the exposure and the inherent economic market for many Bahamians in the creative industries to develop out of their homes and become full commercial operations. Mr. Speaker, these cufflinks I wear today are cufflinks from a constituent of Elizabeth who is running a creative industries operation out of her home, making jewelry from shells of the Bahamas. These two necklaces I hold up right now are made by Bahamians utilizing Bahamian products, utilizing fish scales by a preeminent designer. These are very high-end pieces, Mr. Deputy. Wow. Mr. Deputy, I hold up a straw suit bag made by Dot Miller here in the Bahamas from Long Island. Long Island straw, a beautiful piece that I carry throughout the Caribbean region to show what we can do in the Bahamas. Beautifully lined, Mr. Deputy, beautifully lined.
Long Island, you can buy whatever, man.
And I encourage all members of Parliament to show off what we are in the Bahamas, to show off our creative industries. No, we don't sell red. And, Mr. Deputy,
I only wore this because I didn't want to get beat up.
to be able to use the framework of the launch at the Bahamian Festival as a tool as a tool,
I'm just trying to hear the honorable member for Elizabeth.
as a tool for the development and empowerment of our creative artisans. We have clear talent in this country. Clear talent. It's time to figure out how to commercialize it on an international scale. And the vision by the Prime Minister in having this Bahamian festival on an annual basis where thousands of people come the world over to participate provides that foundation for the development of this industry and empowerment of our people. I congratulate the Prime Minister on his vision. Job well done, sir. Job well done. Value-added agribusiness. Value-added agribusiness, Mr. Deputy. We've heard from the Minister responsible for agriculture and the Prime Minister on the planned advancement of the agricultural industry, and especially the launch of the landmark School of Agriculture and Marine Sciences in North Andros. Ultimate benefit, however, will be attained from the translation of this developed expertise into a successful and a sustainable industry, and especially identifying value-added agribusiness. And I wish my colleague from across the way was here, because I know in his contribution he opined on what are we doing to add value to agriculture to cause it to be sustainable. The member from East Grand Bahama. We must explore value-added opportunities in agriculture, creating value through the production of new products, creating a niche that will develop an enabling market for our economy. As an example, and the member from Bamboo Town would appreciate this because he used a similar example of what we could do here in the Bahamas. Trinidad and Tobago. They continue to make strides in the area of cocoa, adding value to their cocoa product by utilizing the material that was previously discarded as waste from the coffee bean. After a substantial amount of research, Trinidad and Tobago has found that there are 3 parts of the cocoa that can be value added to be used for producing items such as animal feed, gum, and even paper. We in the Bahamas must make the leap towards developing value-added production capacity even in agriculture. The animal feed that Trinidad plans to produce from the coffee bean can be used in aquaculture, fish farming, and other products. See, they are commercializing new products that were previously discarded. And those are the types of value-added initiatives the member from Bamboo Town used as an example. I think it was the husk from the coconut. And how the husk of the coconut forms the bedding to grow other agricultural products in a hydroponics nature. That is a commercialization of a product. A byproduct of something that you are growing. Adding value. Value-added agribusiness is the way of the future. The yacht industry. The Prime Minister discussed in his budget communication the advancement of the Yacht Registry of the Bahamas. It and its regulatory efforts are championed, and I say championed, by the Minister for Transport and Aviation. Hand in hand with the establishment of this framework that is oh so important is the advancement of the yacht industry itself in the Bahamas, leveraging ancillary industry and benefits for Bahamians. I was recently advised by a Bahamian member of the yachting industry that in recent times there have never been so many large yachts as are now in our waters. The international yachting community is clearly embracing the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And with this industry, Mr. Deputy, there is a significant level of spending and capacity to spend. And we must develop Bahamian components of this industry. In cooperation with the Ministry for Transport and Aviation, we will define and promote this industry and engage the Bahamian public on creating support opportunities in the yachting industry. I have long said that the Bahamas should be the Monaco of the Caribbean. When it comes to the mega yachting industry, we will cause this to be accepted worldwide, Mr. Deputy. And as we cause this to be accepted worldwide, we will do so by creating new opportunities for Bahamians, leveraging the development of new industry throughout our islands from this yachting industry that is by itself growing exponentially. Mr. Deputy, I was told that during the Christmas holidays, many of the yachts were chartered by Russians in the Bahamas. Russians flying and coming to the Bahamas to spend weeks on luxury yachts in our waters, spending $60,000 and $70,000 per week just for the boat. And that doesn't include everything else. The disposable income within this industry in our waters, captive, that we will leverage through the efforts of the Minister for Transport and Aviation, can cause and should cause exceptional opportunities for Bahamians throughout this country in new industry. Exceptional opportunities. We will frame, as a government, we will develop, and we will promote this worldwide to cause for the Bahamas and Bahamians to embrace and develop in new industry. Mr. Speaker, we must continue to fight. We must continue to find new markets and opportunities that can increase the standard of living for all of our people. As thousands of students graduate from high school annually, it is the mandate of our government, this government, a PLP government, to facilitate the development of a model that allows fair opportunities and a suitable quality of life for our citizens. In closing, Mr. Speaker, Elizabeth reiterates his support for this budget. We approve of the spending priorities outlined. We applaud the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State for Finance, their courage and their fortitude in moving the country forward towards a value-added tax. We look forward to playing our role in strengthening this great country and our place in the world. Mr. Speaker, I am proud of our team at the Ministry of Financial Services. I am proud of what we are accomplishing for the advancement of industry that was neglected by the prior administration. I am proud of the focus of a small team, but an efficient team and an effective team in accomplishing new goals and new frontiers for the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, we on this side have vision. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are thinkers. I embrace being a thinker. But we also know how to affect the right thing for the advancement of this country in the right way for all people. We have the policies that will work. And this budget, Mr. Speaker, it does accomplish a delicate balance. A balance of the fiscal responsibility that is needed by a government that believes in good governance. But also, on the other hand, it is a budget that causes for the economic advancement and opportunities in new industries, in new areas, creating new employment and new opportunities for entrepreneurism, for our people in the Bahamas, leveraging our products on the international marketplace, Mr. Deputy, causing us to be the beacon of trade throughout the world of what we do best. We want, Mr. Deputy, our artisans to be able to sell their product. We want this product to be able to be sold in Europe, to be sold in Germany, to be sold in Italy, to be sold throughout the world. And what we're doing in the Ministry of Financial Services, with the budget priorities that have been given to us, is to cause for our products and our people in this great country to be able to utilize their skills and abilities throughout the world. And that is true economic empowerment, and that is true economic advancement, and that is the right way, Mr. Deputy, for causing for our people, Bahamians, of this greatest little country in the world, to have new opportunities and advancement. The Minister of State and I had a discussion about the budget not too long ago. And we were talking about the stagnation in growth, and particularly in the tax base and the challenges of revenue for the country. If we don't look broad, if we don't look on new frontiers, and we do not look for opportunities for the economic development and enhancement of our people, and the growth that is needed, we started out talking about a budget of growth, Mr. Deputy. And if we don't further develop the budget of growth, the economy of growth, and the opportunities of growth, not only will we find our people don't have opportunities, we will have significant challenges on just managing the budget and the welfare and operations of a government. So when we talk about, and I made the comment to him earlier, when we were discussing spending restraints, and it's his responsibility to do so. But I'm a revenue man. I believe in building revenue as well as being a responsible government in spending. And you could only build revenue through new opportunities and through opportunities of growth. And this is what this budget does. It sets the foundation for the economic opportunities of growth. And Mr. Speaker, we are proud on this side. We are very proud on this side to recognize our accomplishments within the last year, to recognize the good things we have done for Bahamians. And as the member from Engliston said, it would seem that when you hear from we should commend all of those on this side for giving a true and valid report of the first year in office to the Bahamian people. To showing them and telling them we do have good ideas for their advancement. And not only do we have good ideas for their advancement, we put those in place. We accomplished tremendous things in 1 year and in circumstances that were difficult. And you have heard from many ministers today on the future plans for the upcoming fiscal year. The upcoming fiscal year where we now have a budget for our agenda. A budget we believe will affect the best interests of Bahamians. And a budget that we think will cause our goals and our mandate and our charter for governance to be realized. So I want to take the opportunity then to congratulate each and every one on this side. Each and every one who has worked tirelessly to accomplish the goals for the Bahamian people. I think it's worth noting, Mr. Speaker, that that happened. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude, I want to thank again the great people of the Elizabeth constituency who have put me here twice. Twice. In circumstances, Mr. Speaker, where objective observers would have said we would not win. However, Mr. Speaker, it is through the confidence and the faith of the people I represent that caused me to be here speaking on their behalf. That caused me to put in the framework and advancement of initiatives on a community level for their advancement. When I sit there and I take pride in actually watching new business owners spring out of Elizabeth, new employment opportunities and career opportunities develop, scholarships offered to students coming out of the constituency to advance in professional careers. In fact, Mr. Deputy, I watched, from first coming to office, a young constituent graduating out of high school, being able to provide a scholarship opportunity for her education at the College of the Bahamas. And then, as we put in place the financial services internship program I spoke of, while being able to take advantage of a scholarship she earned through the Elizabeth constituency, she is now part of the internship program in financial services out of the College of the Bahamas. And as a representative, Mr. Speaker, a representative of the people, she couldn't vote for me in 2010. She was too young. Now, you better believe she voted for me this time. But the pride you see, and those who have been representatives for longer, like my big sister from Yamakra, when you watch young people develop, my honorable big sister from Yamakra, when you watch young people develop and gain opportunities because you're trying to develop a community, and then those opportunities translate into professional opportunities and economic opportunities, and you sit there and you say, if I have done well for just one, it makes me proud. And Mr. Speaker, I can say I am proud. When I watched that young girl walk in to an international bank next week, starting her internship program that she qualified and won, makes me proud. And we have to do that. That's why it's so important, Mr. Speaker, as I opened, that we need to provide a positive encouragement for young people in this country. And I'm so pleased at the efforts in this budget to do just that, to create that framework for training, for education, and advancement, for looking out for those who need to be looked out for. Those special needs children who will now have an educational opportunity. Those special needs children who, after their educational opportunity, will have a framework for their advancement outside of school. No more will we have children left behind. No more will we see a government that does not allow for the progression of our people. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say thank you. I am proud of what we have accomplished. I am proud of what we have accomplished in one short year. Yes, sir. And, Mr. Deputy, if we have done such in one short year, imagine what we could do in 5. Imagine what we could accomplish in 10. And imagine what we could accomplish and where the country will be after 15 years of tried and true PLP government leadership. So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to say thank you again to my team in Elizabeth. Thank you for my team in the Ministry of Financial Services for their commitment and ability to get the job done. And, Mr. Speaker, it is my prayer that God continues to bless this great country, the greatest little nation on earth, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, Elizabeth supports this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Ordered that the documents to be tabled be brought up.
All 4 of them are there. Yep. Yep.
Ordered that the documents do lie on the table. Is it time? Before we move on, just by way of information, I'd just like to advise the Honourable House that the Speaker will not be returning this afternoon. So I will be taking the position as Speaker, and the Honourable Member for Mount Moriah will be taking the position as Deputy, just so you don't refer to 2 persons as Deputy. And in addition to that, I've been advised that the Honourable Member for Angleton, Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angleton.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to inform the House that earlier today there was an aviation incident in Marsh Harbour, Abaco, at the Marsh Harbour International Airport. And the information provided me by the Department of Civil Aviation is that it involved a Sky Bahamas aircraft that was traveling from Fort Lauderdale to Marsh Harbour, Abaco, that there were 21 passengers and 3 crew on board, all safe and unharmed, I'll say up front, that there was a mishap on landing on the runway. And when the aircraft had come to a halt, the members of the Department of Civil Aviation were obliged to extinguish a fire in one of the engines. I wish to report, Mr. Speaker, to members that the Flight Standards Inspectorate, which are the crash investigators of the Department of Civil Aviation, have been dispatched and should be en route, if not already, in Abaco. The airport is currently closed because of the activity on that runway and the ongoing investigation, and presently air traffic is being rerouted to the Treasure Key Airport. And I will provide further information as it becomes available. But I just want to reiterate, 21 passengers, 3 crew, all safe and unharmed according to my information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member for Mount Moriah would be the deputy speaker.
Oh, forgive me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise once again on behalf of the very proud people of Fort Charlotte, to whom I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude for being entrusted with the opportunity to represent them here in this honorable place. I will seek to, at all times, do my best to be truthful while always being passionate in speaking to matters that concern all Bahamians and all persons at any time residing within our borders. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration made an interesting analogy in his contribution about the deceptiveness of per capita income and how the Bahamas' per capita income is skewed by the fact that we have proportionately higher number of high net worth persons who, if excluded, would significantly decrease our average and reduce the perception that we are a nation of rich people. As a result of our above average per capita income, we are being denied international funding that other countries in this region, with their comparatively lower average per capita incomes, are able to access for capital development. Mr. Speaker, even in cases where our country's economy is smaller, we are being told that because of our average income per Bahamian, we are too wealthy a nation to qualify for international economic grants or loans to aid our nation's capital developments. This means that as a country, our perceived economic strength has become an area of weakness in terms of our options to access funding from international lending sources. This is a problem, since on the domestic front, our ability to generate internal funding is constrained by the fact that our country's tax revenues have declined in 5 of the past 6 years. We are unable to take $110 million of dividends from BTC, as the former government did, to finance government operations. $110 million could help this country tremendously at this time, because we are still not yet out of the woods. Our country today is still tremendously challenged, financially, socially, on so many different fronts, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
But speaking specifically to our financial situation, as we are debating the budget, the predicament becomes apparent to all. How do we acquire the funding necessary to fund the business of the state? Funding to manage an archipelagic nation of many islands, whose inhabitants feel equally entitled to electricity and water supplies, fully functional airports able to accommodate aircraft needed to support inter-island travel for business and tourism, roads that facilitate ease of transportation, docks that facilitate trade and travel between the islands, seawalls to protect roads against tidal surges, ambulances and mini-hospitals, schools with proper facilities and equipment, garbage trucks and public dumps, police stations and vehicles, fire stations and trucks, defense force installations and vessels to protect our borders. The significant debt and financial commitments that this government inherited means that unless we stimulate significant growth of an existing industry like tourism or financial services, or discover and develop a new one like oil and natural gas, government's ability to secure the funds for capital developments will prove more and more difficult without undermining our country's fiscal health. Our country, Mr. Speaker, needs economic growth so that we are not faced with an increasingly difficult decision of whether to use our precious revenues to service debt or invest in much needed capital developments, policies, or programs. You see, the member for St. Anne said that we are on a precipitous course of having to be in the hands of the finance man, and that this government, by having said that, has very, very, very little wiggle room. We're going to have to play to the tune of the piper. No government wants to be in that position, Mr. Speaker. But what we as a government are acknowledging is that we are very challenged. And rather than focusing on assigning blame and saying that the government that came here before us is responsible, while it would be irresponsible for us to not remind the public of that, because we don't want persons to forget that we met certain conditions in place. But beyond that, the more important issue that the public is concerned about is, what are you going to do to get us out of this jam? And so I say again, our country needs economic growth so that we are not faced with an increasing difficulty in servicing our sovereign debt, while simultaneously facing political pressure to spread even scarcer resources more thinly. This would mean that the little provided to each island would be so inadequate that it serves no useful purpose, or deteriorates the investment, I mean, because the resources to maintain it does not exist. There's nothing more disheartening, Mr. Speaker, than to see that you have invested monies in something that is not maintained, because a lack of maintenance means that there will eventually be a lack of use, and it would have been money poorly spent. So rather than having to be faced with the difficulty of determining how to spread fewer and fewer resources throughout this archipelago, we as a government are focusing on growing the economy so that we're not having to look externally for resources perpetually, as we are having to do now, but spending more time identifying an internal source of revenue because of a grown economy where you have more jobs and more Bahamians who can afford to pay their taxes. Having come to office just 3 short weeks before the 2012-2013 budget was to be tabled, this government had very little time to make any substantive changes to a document that takes a minimum of 3 months to complete. This budget, therefore, is the very first to have this government's signature and strategy for how to prime our country for economic growth and job creation. And it starts with making the necessary fiscal corrections. Under this government, this economy will rebound, and this budget sets out a fiscal plan to achieve this very important goal. Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram, in his 2009-2010 budget contribution, said of the economy, the recovery, when it does occur, is expected to be weaker and much slower than in previous rebounds. Mr. Ingram, a man I must respect as a former Prime Minister of our country, received the same technical advice from the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, very well-respected individuals who worked in global financial institutions that our current leader and esteemed Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Member for Centerville, is receiving. Advice that says, true to form, as the former Prime Minister said, this has proven to be a very tepid and weak recovery. It must also be said, Mr. Speaker, that as much as the technocrats would have advised the former Prime Minister, there's greater evidence today that this administration, led by this Prime Minister, is far more focused on outlining a plan of action geared towards growing this economy.
Yeah.
You see, it was very interesting what the member for Marathon had to say in his presentation in speaking to the lack of vision shown by the former administration. You see, I have no objection to investing monies in roads. I have no objection to investing monies in much-needed healthcare infrastructure. But at the end of the day, there has to be a plan of how the Bahamian people will maximally benefit from those investments. Because if you are building a country that is going to cause for jobs to be created, we'd like to believe that the people working in these hospitals are going to be Bahamians.
Yeah.
We'd like to know that the former administration would have articulated a plan for how to create employment opportunities for Bahamians to take on jobs that are right now predominantly being held by foreign nationals.
Yes.
You talk about roads, but, Mr. Speaker, there is, at this point, a repeat or a mantra that members opposite repeat over and over and over again. Boy, at least you're driving on smooth roads. At least you have smooth roads you can drive on now. If that is the only thing that you can refer to as evidence of your success as an administration, something is drastically wrong. People now, Mr. Speaker, have difficulty putting gas in their car to drive on those roads. People are grappling with the banks having to threaten to foreclose on their homes.
Yes.
They're not worrying about the roads. They want to know that you're going to grow an economy so that they can afford to keep their home, so they can afford to put gas in their car, so that they can afford to buy a car. Because there was no effort on the part of the previous administration to outline a vision that spoke to how it would improve the public transportation system to make it safer, so that you wouldn't feel compelled to buy a car as a result of a fear of your personal safety if you ride on a jitney bus. Vision. The most important evidence of this slow recovery, Mr. Speaker, is that the government, let me back up a little bit. Let me say it this way. The most important evidence of this government's commitment to correcting our fiscal trajectory is that we are making clear steps to decrease the disparity between government spending and government revenue.
Yes.
That's a fact. I'm no financial expert, but if I could at least try to speak in simple terms in a way that I, as a layman, can understand, and the man and woman out there can understand, we are not increasing our debt far more than our country is generating revenue.
Yes.
We're trying to decrease the gap between the increase in debt and the amount of revenue that we're collecting. So rather than this happening, we have a closure of that gap. That is what this budget demonstrates.
Yes. I'm not trying to spend more than we earn.
So yes, even though we have a greater recurrent expenditure in this budget, the number, when you take it as a percentage or an amount of the recurrent revenue, it is more in favor of fiscal responsibility and an improvement of your fiscal health, meaning that your account is starting to look your bank account is starting to look a whole lot more healthy.
Yes.
That is what this Minister of Finance and his team of technocrats at the Ministry of Finance and his cabinet have been forced to do. And rather than being reckless and playing politics and thinking about what is in the best interest of the PLP, they've instead adhered or listened to the advice given, not just by the local experts, but international experts, who've said that you must try to get your financial ship back in order.
Yes.
And think about future generations, and not just the here and the now. So, yeah, don't just think about the next election. Don't just create all these temporary jobs as though you genuinely care, but you do it in the last year or the year, or the eve of an election, and have people believe that you had their interests at heart all along. We can't be short-sighted. So instead of increasing spending as a percentage of revenue, with this budget we are decreasing spending as a percentage of revenue. This is evidence that we have brought a budget to this place that demonstrates an increase in fiscal discipline, to put the brakes on the speed at which we have been increasing our national debt. As the Right Honorable Member for Centerville noted, a consequence of the tremendous borrowing of the previous administration that included debts left for this administration to have to pay for has been that almost 1 out of every $4 spent by government is going towards the payment of our debts. New government works projects, policies and programs to aid the continued development of our economy must be put on hold. Our constituents and Bahamians everywhere are clamoring on a daily basis. We are inundated by calls. When are things going to start to happen? And I think we could do a far better job of reminding Bahamians that while we want things to happen a lot faster, it has just been 1 year since coming back to office and meeting a mountain of debt. And it will take a little longer than you or I would like for things to turn around.
Yeah. We will fix it.
We will fix it, Mr. Speaker. We must fix it. The future of our country depends on how well we do in fixing this problem over the course of the next 2 years.
Yes.
The member for Sinans charged during his contribution that this budget displays continued spending with reckless abandon. And that's a quote. He said, this budget displays continued spending with reckless abandon. If we really displayed continued spending with reckless abandon, we would have no constituents complaining at the rate that they're complaining, because we would have been doing all sorts of things to try to appease the growing chorus of discontent. We could have had a 110-week program, but
not the 52-week.
But it would have been imprudent. It would have been irresponsible to do it before the country started to demonstrate that it was headed in the right direction once again. So I respectfully and emphatically disagree with the member for St. Anne's. We are demonstrating fiscal responsibility. And while I do not need, nor am I comfortable quoting outside sources for fear that if I rest all of my confidence in what they had to say positively this time, I may feel disadvantaged in the future if they don't necessarily agree with what I have to say. But I'm at least happy to know that there are others outside of the government who have no political axe to grind, who are very supportive of the budget that we have brought to this place, in acknowledging that it is in fact a step, a major step in the right direction. In this budget, we are factually decreasing the growth rate of our national debt, which will mean good things for our future ability to access cheaper capital, to make the investments we want to make in our country and in our people. Other measures taken in this budget to help increase our fiscal health are as follows. Closing tax loopholes that cause government to lose revenue, such as having departure taxes that are already being collected by the airlines and not being passed on to the government as they should be, to in fact now be paid to the government as they should be. Yes. You see, when your child goes to the family island to visit mama and papa, or when they go along with you to travel to Florida for whatever reason, and they pay to that airline a portion of the ticket toward departure tax, but instead of remitting or sending payment to the government, you instead keep it and add it to your profit line at the expense and detriment of the state. Who benefits? American Airlines may benefit. Any other airline may benefit. But Bahamas Incorporated doesn't benefit. Yeah. The business of the state doesn't benefit, not to the extent that it should. Another initiative in this budget to try and get our financial house in order is charging stamp taxes on the sale or lease of marina slips. I've listened to the member for Elizabeth, and I must say, had a little printing issue downstairs, Mr. Speaker, as an aside. And I appreciate the camaraderie that people like the good member for Bain and Grantstown and others who are senior in our party have been encouraging of us. Teamwork is a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is.
And I had the member for Pinewood downstairs just a while ago getting me out of a jam in terms of having a little issue with my computer. And he could have just as easily said, you know, you're on your own. But I'd like to publicly thank the member for Pinewood. And it is that collegiality, yes, that teamwork, that is what inures to the benefit of the Bahamian people. But the member for Elizabeth, who spends his time thinking about ways to try and use his portfolio to help the country generate more revenue, has, on a few occasions I've listened to him when he said, you know, we got to find this low-lying fruit. I've heard the member for Pinewood say the same thing. We know it. It's a commonly used phrase to say, you know, find those things that are easy to get. You know, you don't have to reach far to get that fruit on the tree. It's hanging low, low-lying fruit. Ready for the picking. Ready for the picking. And we have things in this country that represent easy government revenue that, as a result of a lack of vision, perhaps, we haven't seemed to see value in the past. But the charging of stamp taxes on the sale or lease of marina slips, I've heard the member for Elizabeth talk about how much money, how much potential tax dollars we are losing by not assessing that stamp tax. And here it is in this budget, we're making sure that we do so. We're increasing stamp taxes from 1.5% to 5%, charged to international companies on monies earned here that are converted to foreign currency and repatriated to foreign jurisdictions. I've said it in here before. If commercial banks do not demonstrate a genuine interest in facilitating the productive pursuits of our economy, yes, but are more interested in promoting the consumer cravings of our people, we must, as a government, as a responsible government, impose financial measures to ensure that we can exact the type of revenue we need to be able to invest in our economy, to empower our Bahamian people, to live up to the promises that we made when we ran and were successful in becoming the government in 2012. So for those who say, boy, you're taxing the banks now, they're just going to pass that on to the Bahamian consumer. Well, I urge the Ministry of Finance, I urge consumer protection groups to monitor what takes place with these banks, because it is not as though they are not making tremendous profits already on the backs of the Bahamian people.
Hundreds of millions.
The margin, their profit margin must be the highest here that it is anywhere in this region.
For the same size banks, yes.
And how is it that we as a government are criticized for trying to do something that should have been done a long time ago? If you don't have a solid argument to respond to the measures taken by the government in this budget, then you should just have nothing to say at all. Because the Bahamian people are too smart to recognize that banks have been getting away with highway robbery in this country.
Yes.
And it must be a part of your social conscience to be a good corporate partner beyond just doing things that demonstrate a very lighthearted attempt at being seen as a generous corporate donor. There's so much more that can be done. I listened to the member for Tall Pines yesterday, and I'm going to touch on something he raised earlier. But there are legitimate Bahamian businesses in this country with solid business plans. But as a result of a lack of government facilitation, a lack of interest on the part of those who have the power to empower Bahamians, we have allowed a small group in this society to profit exponentially. And the more the disparity increases, the less social harmony we will have. So I believe that if you're going to make so much money here, build it up, convert it to another currency, like the US dollar, and send it out of this country so that another Caribbean country could tax it before they send it off to Canada or elsewhere, I believe we should get our take.
That's right.
And only a foolish government, a government that is not awake, only a government that is asleep at the wheel would allow that injustice to continue.
That's right. You stop it. Taking ours off the top.
Another measure, we are implementing controls that will make it easier for government to collect real property taxes assessed on commercial properties by involving the domestic banks in the collection of those fees. You see, I'm not opposed, as I said previously, to any business in this country making a profit. I'm not opposed to the banks making a profit. All I'm saying is that we must ensure that they are not able to fleece the Bahamian people.
Yes.
That's the important point. Another measure, we are imposing a new business license fee on commercial banks to a rate of 3% on gross profits. The rate now stands at 0. It doesn't exist. There's no business license fees on banks before this budget. There's a business license tax on BTC, but none on the banks. And so this budget brings about an imposition of a new business license fee on commercial banks to a rate of 3% on gross profits, a fee that is still lower than the business license fee charged to the communication sector, which is taxed at a rate of 4.75%. Yeah. That makes BTC the most taxed commercial entity in the country at this time. This budget brings about an increase in the sin tax on cigars and cigarettes, while simultaneously introducing excise stamp tax to curtail the smuggling of cigarettes. I should make it clear. They're simultaneously introducing excise stamps so that it's more difficult to smuggle these products in, bypassing the tax collector. This will accomplish two things: an increase of the taxes received from the sale of cigarettes, and give persons who want to quit another reason to do so. So this is financial policy that makes sense, not just financially, but it promotes an improvement in health, trying to discourage bad habits and produce a healthier society so that we don't have as many chronic, non-communicable diseases. This budget is introducing transparency to the reporting of budget expenditures by, for example, clearly outlining expenditure and not putting it under dubious names to hide what the money is actually being spent on. The Progressive Liberal Party has been accused time and time again by the party opposite of being a government that is not transparent. I sat in here amazed listening to the back and forth when it was claimed that we have done this place a disservice by not explaining why we decided to change the reporting of jobs in the public service. I don't think they realized what they did when they made that point. They accused us of trying to be more transparent in making it clear how many people you are hiring in the public service, rather than trying to, as they did, hide it, conceal it in different line items that did not make it clear that they were being, that the line item was to pay for jobs. So yes, this is a more transparent budget. And the Progressive Liberal Party has been applauded by the opposition for being more transparent than they were during their past term in office. Amazing. This budget is going to bring more control over government spending by giving the Ministry of Finance greater control over ministerial expenditures.
Real government in the sunshine.
The Right Honourable Member for Centerville is saying, I want there to be greater oversight, more accountability.
Yes.
And so he's allowing the Ministry of Finance to exercise greater control over the ministries to ensure that what we say we will do as far as controlling expenditure is lived up to, as he so clearly articulated in the mid-year budget exercise, when he acknowledged that the measures being taken to curb government spending were on target. As a matter of fact, instead of I don't want to use a figure that is not accurate, but the exact amount of recurrent expenditure that was projected in when we were in this place a year ago, we went under that by almost 300 million or at least 300 million, all because of prudent stewardship on the part of this Christie-led administration. But there are weaknesses. There are weaknesses. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, we must always be frank and honest with our people, because the Bahamian people, and I said when I entered politics, Bahamian voters used to be accused of being easily swung. But now Bahamians are smart swing voters. And the swing voters out there decide governments. And we must always respect them. And we have to, therefore, look at the weaknesses in our country. Weaknesses like immigration. You see, as the member for Tall Pine said, we have weaknesses because people outside of the Bahamas who are in this region see this country as being a land of riches and opportunity. Land of milk and honey. Yep. And it cannot be acceptable for us to allow others to come in and reap the rewards or to partake of the riches of the land while our own people are suffering and struggling. You see, I've heard people talk about they look forward to the day that we have 750,000 or 1 million Bahamians. I have to say that I believe when we talk about vision, we need to have a real conversation about whether we wish to have an economic model where the Bahamas has a small population, less people who make more money, as opposed to more people who make less money. I rather, Mr. Speaker, have an economy with less people making more than an economy of more people making less. You see, when I campaigned, and even today, when I have my regular office hours, I am constantly confronted with young Bahamians who are not working. Young Bahamians and their parents brought to tears because these are the most trying and difficult times they have ever had to endure. And yet I am as well frequently in contact with persons who are non-Bahamian, who are blissfully happy because this economy is so good to them. And I think that our lax immigration controls is facilitating an economy that is disproportionately benefiting the people who reside in it. Because I think Bahamians are benefiting less than those who are non-Bahamian. And I have no less love for any particular human being. I love all human beings, but I especially love my Bahamian people. And if we were able to find it necessary to want to run to represent them, we should always be fighting to advance their interests and not apologize for having done so. We have so many long-term unemployed. We have Bahamians who have never held a solid job, 9 to 5 in their life. 28 years old and have never had a job. What do you think of the odds of that person being a productive, contributing member of this society as opposed to a common criminal? Slim to none. And this is why I applaud, with this new budget, the member for Golden Gates in bringing soon to this place legislation for a national training agency, recognizing the importance of training our people so that they can be employable, so that when this economy does pick up, Bahamians will be able to fill the jobs that would have been created. Mr. Speaker, I believe that in this country, and some may call this radical, I've heard people say that this may harm our tourism industry, but in this country I believe that when you come here, especially from countries that may not have the extent of human tracking technology, where the ability to track and follow your citizens is not what it is, for example, in a country like the United States of America. I believe that if you come here from countries in this region, where they come in through, in many cases, the domestic section, right? And the domestic section, I think, is perhaps less secure than the international section. Not to say that it is not secure, but I think that the rigors that one goes through to depart the international section are are less lenient in the domestic section. And I think we need biometrics for all non-U.S. citizen visitors. We need to record their facial imagery. And I think we should be recording fingerprints. Because we have people, we have a crime problem, but nobody seems to be talking about whether or not these crimes are being committed by persons who come into this country
And then leave on the next flight.
on a 2-day trip, commit their crime, leave the country, and you never see or hear about them again. And you collect a fingerprint on a crime scene, but you'll never find anybody who belongs to that fingerprint because they came in here for 2 days, and you'll never see them again. I think when you come in here the same way I'm expected to travel into the United States and have my photograph recorded and have my fingerprints taken, I think we should do the same for anybody wishing to come into the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Because when I campaigned, I met a whole lot of people who couldn't vote for me, but they were working. And I met a whole lot of people who could vote for me who weren't. So we need to be more serious in policing our borders. And guess what? It's not only in our best interest, in the interest of the Bahamian worker for us to do that. It's in the interest of the safety of the United States of America for us to do that. And as they have offered to help us, I believe that we should continue to work closely with the United States in receiving their help and ensuring that we are protecting our borders while simultaneously protecting them. Another weakness is our limited tourism product, Mr. Speaker. We don't do enough to maximize our visitor cultural, culinary, and entertainment experience. People come here and oftentimes the taxi drivers or the men and women on the street, when asked what is there to do, well, they're at a loss for words. What are we doing to try and improve the visitor experience? We've got people with tremendous ideas, people who want to do things on Arawaki, people who want to do things on Fort Charlotte, people who want to have entertainment businesses, the musicians. Ronnie Butler right now, a great Bahamian, beautiful music. Many people would love to come here and sit down as an audience listening to Ronnie Butler and people like KB.
Yes.
What are we doing to say we are going to do more than just invest in Junkanoo as a cultural institution? Junkanoo is beautiful, but any cultural enthusiast will acknowledge that there's so much more that we have in our repository of cultural wealth that we're not tapping into. I applaud the government on the effort to further develop Junkanoo and the opportunities for Junkanoo artisans. However, we must not limit our cultural and entertainment experience to Junkanoo alone. Bahamian musicians, painters, sculptors, and other artisans must also benefit from government incentives and investment. The tourism product and the economy will, by extension, also benefit. Give the tourists more to do. They will want to come because they would have heard of a great experience from a friend of theirs in whichever place that they live. And when they get here and they enjoy it so much, they'll stay longer. We'll be able to grow our anemic stopover visitor numbers. Cost of labor is another weakness. You see, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what has been said, but in Cuba right now, we talk about Grand Bahama and what's happening with the Freeport Container Port. Freeport Container Port is not even in the top 50 of the largest container ports in the world. And it has a capacity of 1.5 TWUs. So, TEUs, sorry, 20-ton equivalent units, right? And in Cuba right now, with Brazilian dollars, they are building a $900 million Mariel port using Brazilian dollars. 600 million of it is coming from the Brazilian government. And it's going to be a port that holds 3.3 million TEUs, a capacity of 3.3 million TEUs. So more than double the size of the port in Grand Bahama. In Cuba, they got what? Cheaper labor. They're talking about having this port be to deal with all of the traffic of cargo for this entire region, a major hub. How is this going to impact the economy of Grand Bahama? The Brazilian government has an incentive to want to support it because they've got their money invested in it. And so that's why you can appreciate how important it is for the member for Elizabeth to be trying to travel on these trips to help the, build the relations between our country and Brazil so we can try to find some partnership and want to work together so that we are not undermining our ability to succeed as a result of competition that's coming on stream in our backyard. We must focus on an economy of fewer people and more specialized, higher paying jobs. Example, the maritime industry. I want to applaud Campbell Shipping for their investment in the maritime school, because the maritime industry, even with competition from places like Cuba, the highly technical nature of those jobs means that if we train Bahamians in that particular field, they are guaranteed to be paid higher wages. And if we have these specialized forms of training for these specialized jobs through the National Training Agency, through the development of a maritime school, potentially through the college or soon to be University of the Bahamas, we can build a better economy where we can ensure that we protect the interests of the Bahamian people and not be trying to attract cheap labor for low-skilled jobs. Yeah. Crime. And I also want to mention, a weakness that we have is I think we at times become too insular. We become so, it can be detrimental to an economy to be solely reliant on your own people. And I know for some listening, they may say, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You already talked about how important it is to look out for your own people. Now you're saying you need also people from the outside? Yes, we still do also need people from the outside at different junctures of our development. And right now, when you look at the financial services industry, people like to spend money or to have their money kept with people that they know and trust. And while I'm not saying that we should displace Bahamians from financial services, absolutely not. I believe that what Ryan Pinder and Brian Marie said, that we should,
member for Elizabeth.
The member for Elizabeth and respected member of the legal profession in our country, Mr. Brian Marie, former head of the financial BFSB, Bahamas Financial Services Board, when they said in an article in the Tribune that what we need to do is bring Bahamians into collaborative relationships with foreign specialists in financial services so that we can attract more investment or business in the financial services industry here to the Bahamas. Yes. If we are smart and not so, we should never be xenophobic. We have to protect our people, but there are some cases or some examples where we can be strategic in bringing people, high-skilled people, into this country to help us to make a lot more money, to create a lot more high-paying jobs for the Bahamian people. And that is why the member for Elizabeth and Mr. Brian Marie, I believe, should be given greater amount of attention when they speak to the need to provide these visa opportunities for persons who are foreigners but experts in financial services to work collaboratively with our Bahamian experts in the industry of financial services. Crime. Mr. Speaker, when I made my inaugural speech as a member of the Progressive Liberal Party, I said we need our men to be functioning members of our society. We need them living and working in our communities and not residing behind the walls of Her Majesty's prison. But at the rate we are going right now, where we are churning out persons who are not properly trained and educated as a result of the failings in our homes and in our schools, we are in a situation now where we have such a high number of individuals who need us to invest in trying to get them back on track. And for some, they will perhaps move too quickly and commit crimes that will prevent us from reaching them in time. But while I don't believe in espousing a view that says we must build an incarceration society, I believe we got to get serious. We need a new prison, Mr. Speaker. The congestion that exists at Her Majesty's prison, and I believe we should take up the member for Bain and Grandstown, take him up on his offer to carry this entire crew to Her Majesty's prison, to experience firsthand how those men and women are living. Because if you are piled on top of each other, like black men and women were piled on top of each other in slave ships in the Middle Passage, to come here and other places in this region, do you expect to become a civilized member of society? Do you expect to be of the ilk that you are going to be a productive member of society? We learned as a people, our history should be told the way the history of the Jews is told, so we can understand why we have the deficiencies that we do, so that we can work on correcting them. But the same way we were trafficked like subhuman beings, animals, we were trained to conduct our affairs in a fashion that was not conducive to building our people. And so we must try to be progressive in having a prison constructed that will cause for people to be treated in a fashion that will ensure much greater likelihood that when they depart the doors of that prison, they are prepared to be more fit to re-enter civilized society. I applaud the government for continuing with the effort to place CCTV or closed-circuit television cameras throughout parts of the inner city, and not just in the downtown community, because we're not just about trying to protect the tourists. We need to protect everybody. Bahamians are crying out because the fear of crime is at a high level. We will not lie about it. We will acknowledge that we believe a lot must be done. And I can assure you, the member for Bain and Grandstown, while he may not defend himself against the attacks that are leveled at him, he has been under a tremendous amount of pressure. He's working extremely hard, and it shows. And I would like to think that we would not allow him to be the subject of a torrent of criticism without coming to his defense. Because if I were in his shoes, I know that there's things that I cannot say. But we know from being with him on the inside that he is working, and he's going to get things back in the right direction. He's not soft on crime. He's not soft on us as the leader of government business in this place.
So true.
We need to blanket our town, New Providence, with closed-circuit television cameras. The major thoroughfares should have closed-circuit TV so that even if we cannot afford to put CCTVs in each of our communities, when a car that has just recently been used as a getaway vehicle, after having committed a crime, will be spotted on the major thoroughfares, when you combine the report that you get from the person who is the victim of the criminal act. You can give a description of the car, the CCTV can pick it up on the major thoroughfare, you know the make and model of the vehicle. We need closed-circuit television cameras throughout New Providence to give Bahamians a greater sense of security, to make them feel more comfortable. But I must say that I am concerned, and I'm happy to hear the member for Angliston yesterday, 2 days ago rather, talk about how her ministry is looking at standards. Because I do not believe that we should be allowing vehicles to come into this country that are not roadworthy. The discarded vehicles of other countries, whether they be in Asia or in America, thrown into this country. Lemons that don't have functioning airbags, airbags that do not deploy, even though they're supposed to be in there, or things that are just waiting to snap so that a car veers off the road at a most inopportune time. We need to ensure that vehicles brought into this country are at a minimum acceptable standard, not somebody else's discarded trash. And we should look into LoJack as a system. I know I read in the past where Dr. Cornville Brown had invested in that technology. But how is it that you could have so many vehicles stolen on an island 21/7 and you can't find them? You don't know where the vehicles are stolen. It's not like you got to deal with the state of Utah. You don't have nooks and crannies and all sorts of places you could hide a vehicle. We should have LoJack so that vehicles brought in, and another thing with the bringing in wrecked vehicles or substandard vehicles, it gives people who are inclined to lives of crime, it gives them more reason to want to engage in a life of crime because they're stealing off of other people's hard-earned property in order to fix their lemons, to make them roadworthy, so that they could fix it up and perhaps sell it. So it's a system that is going to, if allowed to remain in place, facilitate an increase in vehicular theft. And I think that another suggestion I make humbly to the Ministry of Transportation and the member for Engliston, I think that the same way we are putting excise stamps on cigarettes, we should have a way of electronically tracking the registration of vehicles. It cannot be that we continue to use books to write information about vehicles. I was told that if you call police control room, and I invite the member for Bain and Grandson to refute this, but if you call the police control room after a crime is committed and you report that a particular car with a certain license plate was just involved in a crime in front of your property, they do not have a way to go into a computer system now to know who that car belongs to. That car would have had to be involved in a criminal act previously so that it would have already been entered into the system. But we need greater cooperation between the Ministry of National Security and Transportation to be able to interface and be able to track these incidents involving vehicles. So I credit the member for Engliston on her effort to standardize, improve standards at the Ministry of Transport, and to eliminate loopholes, which I'm understanding is on the horizon, of eliminating loopholes for fraud through the very antiquated vehicle registration system. We need computerization at all levels of government. Inefficient public corporations, Mr. Speaker. The landfill site at Tonic Williams Darling Highway, I feel for the people who live in the constituency of Tall Pines and the constituency of Garden Hills. We talk about investing $3 billion at Bahamas and attracting tourists here. But if we as a government, successive governments, cannot properly manage that site, I think that we need to be innovative and allow persons in the private sector who specialize in that to do it and relieve the government of the burden and the frustration. The high import costs associated with the Arawak port monopoly, something done by the previous administration that causes every grain of food that you put in your mouth, and this budget reflects it, the cost of food is increasing, and it is increasing because of the poor policies of the former administration. They allowed that Arawak port to come in here and have a long-term monopoly, so that when you bring these things in, you have to be at the mercy of a conglomerate. The member for Tall Pines called them a cartel. If they were the free national movement and they were interested in progressive policies, if they were interested in trying to encourage enterprise as they say they are, how could they say that and with the flip of a switch create monopolies that only increase costs because you don't have any competition? It makes no sense. the former administration had no vision.
None.
And the last thing I will say is, when you look at where we are as a country, we must do all that we can to empower our people. Bahamians expected we would put them first, and with this budget, it is a very good step in the right direction to turn this economy around, to cause our fiscal ship to be righted, so that we are in fact able to bring prosperity once again to the good people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Fort Charlotte supports this budget.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bain and Grandstown.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps you would wish to determine whether or not the leader of the opposition is in the precincts of the House.
Yes.
We have been operating on a 3-to-1 procedure, and I indicated to him earlier today that he would be speaking after our third speaker, who has just completed. So could you find out whether he's...
Yes, I will.
He's out of town. Yeah, I'm supposed to, yeah. No, he said speak now.
Just while we wait, it was interesting. I know I hardly see the member for Bain and Grandstown smiling. When you indicated how tough he is on the members in the House, he smiled a little.
They wanted to say.
I've been advised, the Honourable Member for Bain and Grandstown, that the Leader of the Opposition has indicated that he's having a health challenge. He's not well enough today to deliver his speech.
He's having a health challenge? He's in the precincts of the House?
He is in the precincts of the House, I'm being advised, in the committee room.
Come up and inform the House?
That is what I was advised. That was the exact words given to me.
Mr. Deputy Mr. In that case, I wish to suspend the House.
Yes.
I wish to move the suspension of the House.
It's been moved. Is there a
Monday,
second? Sorry.
Until Monday the 17th at 10 a.m. in the morning.
It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House be adjourned, be suspended to Monday, the 17th of June at 10 a.m. As many as in favor shall remain seated. Those that oppose shall stand. It has been agreed the business of this House will be suspended to Monday, the 17th of June at 10 a.m.
abruptly, really, the session for today, because we were expecting to go as had been planned until 10 o'clock this evening. That's not going to happen. The leader of the opposition, who we understand scheduled to present, is having a health challenge. We don't know that it's a health challenge that we ought to be overly concerned about, but my understanding is he will not be able to present today, and as a consequence, the House has been suspended until Monday morning, as we expected anyway. The debate will probably be concluded on Monday, so this budget debate on to Monday morning, 10 o'clock this afternoon. We heard from the Member of Parliament for Elizabeth, Minister of Financial Services Ryan Pinder, talking about the initiatives in his ministry and the importance of that ministry being re-established because of the comfort it gives to members of the industry, but also because it allows the government of the day and the people of the Bahamas to be on top of activities and movements in the financial services industry, of course, the second pillar of our economy. Member for Fort Charlotte, Andre Rollins. Dr. Rollins beginning his presentation talking, among other things, about the deceptiveness of the per capita income standard that is used to judge the Bahamas. And at the end, they're talking about the necessity of us paying attention to what happens in our country and looking out for Bahamians, talking about what happens with banks and how they have been exploiting the Bahamian people. And, of course, the need for there to be standards, again, at the very end, talking about the importation of the wrecked cars and one of the challenges that we have to deal with, the landfill down at Tonic Williams Darling Highway. Again, we will have more on Dr. Rollins, of course, and Minister Pinder in a later newscast, and I'll let you hear from them again on Monday morning when we return. We'll have some more from both of those presenters, and we're not quite sure, again, the member for Kalani, Dr. Hubert Minnis, who is the leader of the official opposition. He will probably begin his presentation on Monday morning. We'll see how that goes. So on behalf of the team here at the Parliamentary Channel, I'm Anthony Newbold. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon as well as your weekend. See you on Monday.